Good evening, everyone. Could you settle down, please? We're going to start the meeting. Welcome, everyone, to our meeting this evening. We're going to start this meeting, as we do everyone, with the Pledge of Allegiance. There were no reportable actions taken in closed session. Are there any statements of abstention? Seeing none. Any adjustments to the agenda? Frank, did you have an adjustment?
Yes, I'd like to pull approval of vendor warrants from consent to public. That item E3.
Thank you. Any board member requests for information? I need to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting held on August 24th. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
That was moved by Director Pugh, seconded by Director Christoph. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Abstain.
President Jay?
Aye. Before we move on to public comments, I've neglected to vote on item B6, and this is a readmit of a student expulsion.
Move approval of the readmit. Second.
That was approved by moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Hanel. Roll call vote, please.
I'm sorry, who's the second?
Hanel.
Okay. Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Can I vote on this? No.
Okay.
Abstain.
Okay. Director Close?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye. So now we move on to C7, which is public comments of items not on the agenda. Members of the public may address the board on matters within the subject matter of its jurisdiction. Please submit a speaker card, and I have one speaker card for comments not on the agenda. Please submit the speaker card to the board secretary prior to the meeting being called to order. Upon recognition of the board president, please approach the podium. The board shall take no action on discussion on any items not appearing on the posted agenda, except as authorized by law. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Should a member of the public have comments that pertain to a complaint against an employee of the district, the board advises that the matter should first be pursued using the appropriate district complaint procedure. So I have one card. It's Sylvie Vatinelli. Come on down. Hi.
I'd like to officially submit our material revision for Praxis Charter School.
Could you repeat that for the, it's important, it's a process you have to go through, right? Yeah, so
Okay.
could you repeat it so we have it on tape?
What's that?
Just repeat what you said to me.
We would like to formally submit our materials revision for Abraxas Charter School.
Thank you very much for coming down tonight. We'll make note of that.
Thank you.
Any other comments of items not on the agenda? No. With all the green here, I can't imagine what you're all here to speak about, but I guess we're going to find out. Now we're going to move on to reports, starting with the Santa Rosa Teachers Association. President Ola King Clay. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent, and Board of Directors, and the RVCS Secretary, and most of all, the parents and the students in the audience. At this point in time, I would like to request a moment of silence for one of our fallen heroes, Patrick Taylor, a 28-year educator and counselor at Santa Rosa Middle School who just retired last year and unfortunately no longer with us.
So we'll begin that moment of silence now. Thank you. Thank you.
We've just finished our first 21 days of teaching and learning. The honeymoon is still active and moving in the right direction. We're all eager to make this the best year. As we all know, working as a team, we can move mountains, rivers, and create masterpieces. But this can only take place if we all fly in the same direction, using that V formation to keep us moving in the right direction. As we use our power of knowledge, it will help us to make it a very successful flight. As I reviewed your agenda tonight, I see that you are approving the contract for psychologists. I know there's a high need, not only in Santa Rosa, but all over the state. We, SRTA, would like to encourage the district to seek a remedy to help attract highly qualified staff by using the old bargaining system to make our district more competitive. SRTA also acknowledge and applaud your creativity in working with interns in our nursing category. Since we're very limited in our number of nurses on staff, we don't want to overburden them with another job. One of your discussion items for tonight is the proposal for school improvement. Great. Would it be possible to get a list of which schools will be first, second, and third, and so on the list for improvement? This will be very helpful not only to the students, but to teachers as well. Resolution. It brings great joy to see that you, the board, is publicly sponsoring Proposition 55 and 58. Prop 55 will maintain the cash flow from Prop 30, which will help our students in a variety of educational ventures. Now for more positive news. I would like to give a special shout out to all the educators at Elsie Allen High School for starting the year using their new bell system built around the students and their needs. Thanks to Francine and her committee for working on this. Next, special shout goes out to someone who goes over and beyond. This goes out to one that I meet with at least once a week. And I always know that when I enter that room, I will hear the sweet sounds of R&B, Motown, and a little rock and roll. Jason, we don't always agree on the form, but we do agree that we must communicate, plan, and execute as a team. Once we will be flying in the right direction. Now for my famous words of wisdom. Each of you have a copy. Hopefully you had a chance to glance. If not, you can do this for some bedtime reading. It's awesome. The Goose Story. I will not read it all, but I'll elaborate it on parts that really pertain to us. People who share a common direction and a sense of community can get where they are going more quickly and easily because they are traveling on the thrusts of one another. If we have as much sense as Goose, we will stay in formation with those who are headed in the same direction. It is sensible to take turns doing demanding jobs with people or with geese flying south. What do we say when we honk from behind? If we have the sense of Goose, we will stand by each other. That's what educators do. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, are you here tonight from CSEA? No? So we're going to move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, members of the board, and welcome all of you here tonight as well. So first off, I'd like to talk about the district showcase, which will be happening on October 8th. That'll be occurring at the Cottingtown Mall, and I just wanted to give everybody enough and ample time to be able to schedule for that. It'll be from 12 to 4 p.m., where our schools will be showcasing all the wonderful things that they do. This is in conjunction with what will be our open enrollment period, which begins October 1st and will end on November 18th. The other thing that I wanted to share about that you've probably heard a lot about, and that is the passage by the State Board of Education around the LCAP accountability. So that occurred last week. So the rubric or the measurements are going to be directly related to the 8 state priorities that we've been talking a lot about in the LCAP. And the measurements and the performance standards are going to be really be based upon some things that I'd like to share with you that are readiness for college and career, graduation rates, progress of English learners, and suspension rates, along with scores on standardized tests, chronic absenteeism, as well as how well we're doing on implementing the California standards, how are we doing with parent engagement, and what does our school climate look like. So we'll be having a board presentation upcoming around our SBAC scores, as well as much information as we can get at this time from the state board on that LCAP accountability system. I had the very, very great fortune of attending an exhibit at Sonoma State University, and I really encourage all of you to attend and our schools to attend. It's called, and I left a flyer for each of the board members, and I'll give you the information if anybody else wants it. It's called Creativity Unconfined, Life in World War II Japanese American Intern Camp. It's a display in the library of the Sonoma County Japanese Americans who were interned in Amachi, Colorado. Interestingly enough, I was born and raised in Yuba City, and my family was interned in Amachi, Colorado. And so I found it so wonderful to see all of the people there, and I'm going to get my parents to come over and see the exhibit, but I definitely would love for us to share this with our students and our families, and for the board to see this great exhibit. It'll run through December. And finally, are we able to put it up? This month is September. September is about attendance awareness, and I know that it's a month, and it really should be all year, and it is a part of the hard work that our Truancy Intervention Prevention Committee worked on. That one of the things they wanted to do was create a public service announcement that we could share and spread everywhere. I'm going to send it to President Obama and Kamala Harris. I'm going to do this. So I'd like to share, as I end my presentation tonight, I would like to share the attendance video with the board and the public.
I'm Diane Kittamura, Superintendent of Santa Rosa City Schools. Those days between kindergarten and graduation go so fast. Did you know that one of the most important things you can do to ensure your child's success is to get them to school every day? Attendance matters. Let's work together this year to make sure that every student is in school every day. School every day counts.
Thanks for the report. I'm going to give a short President's report tonight. I just wanted to thank SRTA for your candidate forum. School board, there are 4 seats on the school board that are up for election, and SRTA put on a candidates forum at Pioneer High School, I don't know, a week or 2 ago. There's really no other, there, as far as I know, never has been, and there currently isn't any other format like this, so for people to go and hear all the candidates at one time and hear their individual answers to the same questions. So I found it really, really informative, and I really appreciate the fact that you've made this available. I know a lot of work went into putting that together, and I think it was well worth it. I hope you all do too. But I think you're putting this on your, or maybe it already is on your Facebook page. Okay, and so you can see the whole thing there, and maybe fast forward but a few times. But I think it's really worth it to take a look and know who's running to represent your children. So, and you students need to know who's running and what their plans are, what their interests are, what their goals for the district are. Really, really informative. So thank you. Now I'll turn it over to other board member reports. Okay. Bill?
Yes, a couple of things. I also attended the SRTA Candidates Night, and before it started, I went up and had a chance to talk with Michael, who was a Maria Carrillo student who was taking pictures of, well, actually recording from 2 different cameras, and I talked to Lorraine afterwards, and much along the lines of what President Jay was saying, I was suggesting we ought to try to get this on the community media channel. The fact of the matter is it was a good forum, it was a good way for people to learn about each of the candidates, and it's so hard when you get down to the bottom of the ballot to understand who the candidates are and what they care about, and there are just so few forums available that it would be wonderful if we could get a wider group of folks to be able to see that. So appreciate that it was there, appreciate that there was a Maria Carrillo high school student that was recording that, and the wider the spread, the better I think we will all be. Second, I had a chance to go out to the Maria Carrillo High School fields last week with the football coach, with some district staff, and eventually with the principal and vice principal as well. I've been out there before, but it was, I think, important to see what things look like now. And I've had a chance to go out to Montgomery's field, Piners Field, and not just the football field, because clearly there's a difference between the football field at Maria Carrillo High School and everybody else, and we're going to fix that tonight. But it's clear to me, and I went to play as well, not just the fields that are in our district. You know, fields across this entire city aren't in the shape that we'd really like them to be, and I think we as a community ought to redouble our efforts in that regard. Last thing I'd say is that if you don't have anything to do on a Tuesday or Thursday night, I would go to www.sparq, that's Spark, SPARQ, that's at, PHS, which is pioneerhighschool.com. The planetarium there does STEM cafes once a month. This month it's on single-cell genomes. They bring in speakers from all over the place, not just within our community, but SSU, SRJC. There's a doctor coming from Buck Institute in a couple of months to talk about aging. They are amazing, free discussions, and I would encourage you to look on there and check it out. The other thing that they're doing this year, which is unbelievable, is that each month they will have the planetarium in full bloom, in essence. You'll get an introduction for 45 minutes of what can happen in there, and then they'll have an additional film of some sort that ends up playing over the whole planetarium. The next one is Thursday, September 29th, and this is a full dome presentation of NASA visualizations. You want to know what's going on, what the world looks like from a different location. What a great way to spend your September 29th evening out there. Next week or next month, there's going to be one on the deep sea. And so you'll be sitting in that planetarium and essentially swimming through the ocean and looking at things. Unbelievable resource for the community. Check out the website. It's a wonderful place to go in the evening. It's a cheap date. And my wife was thrilled when we went to the one that was about aging. So I didn't have to spend anything on a ticket, and yet she walked out of there thinking, this was really cool. So I encourage you to check it out.
Good information to know. Bill, it's a cheap date, so. Larry, why don't you take it from there?
No report, but thanks for that information.
Jen?
Thanks. So just this morning, I went and spoke to a AP government class at LC Allen at the invitation of Mr. Alan Petty, who's up there with us tonight. And I just wanted to say what a great time it was. It was such a really wonderful group of kids who had good questions and good insights, and we had good fun. And so since he's here, I wanted to thank Mr. Petty again for inviting me to do that.
Ron? No report. Ross? Okay. I'm sorry?
Did you ask this?
I did. I always have people checking me when I'm up here. Did you do this? Did you do that? No? It's a team. Whether or not I need a team, I have a team. So, okay, that's good. I'm sorry.
Retaliation.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Couldn't help myself. CSBA NSBA report. Frank?
Thank you, President Jay. The National School Board Association is particularly happy with the recent involvement with the Career Technical Education Act that was passed by the House yesterday. This is also known as the Carl Perkins Act. What's interesting about what was passed is the federal change in how they see and view career technical education. There are three main elements. One is workforce alignment. They're concerned that we are offering too many careers in the past to our students, and we should be looking at things like coding, looking at advanced manufacturing and health sciences, those types of things. Another area of focus was the easier access to dollars. The application process will be much simpler than it has been in the past. And they're pushing for federal hands-off. The legislation would roll back federal education department role in programs and monitoring the programs. There will be some oversight, though, but it's changing a lot. So what would we do with that with our district? I think the most important of the three elements is workforce alignment. And what's going to happen is that the bill would require districts to consult with local employers when planning and setting goals for CTE programs or the creation of future CTE programs. They want to see advisory committees. Now, in the case of the county, there's like one big advisory committee. But I think the federal law that will be written is going to focus in on advisory committees for individualized programs so that we get the right people with the right expertise in creating these programs in our district. And then from the California School Board Association, just to let you know that we'll have a board of directors meeting this weekend. We will be talking about a major reorganization within the association. We may be looking at fortifying outreach programs in the state. We may be hiring as many as 80 outreach coordinators. This is all getting prepared to push the envelope a little bit on things that are important to us. As you probably know, the Supreme Court refused to hear the Robles-Wong suit, and that's certainly not good news at all. This was a lawsuit that was filed when I was president of the association, so I'm kind of endeared to this, seeing this move forward. My assumption is that there will probably be an adequacy proposition placed on the ballot in the future. The grassroots coordinators will probably be pushing that in local communities. So I think you're seeing California School Board Association become more responsive and proactive when it comes to legislative issues as well as propositions. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Bill, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I have one other thing. I appreciate Ola's request that we have a moment of silence for Patrick and Taylor, and certainly our thoughts go out to his family. We lost one other longtime employee in the last couple of weeks, a teacher and very long-time administrator, Vern Kelsey. And our thoughts and prayers go out to his wife, Jean, and their family as well.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we move on to our consent items, and I need a motion.
I move E1 and 2 and 4 through 11.
Second.
That was moved by Director Christoph, seconded by Director Carl. Roll call vote, please.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Pugh? President Jay?
Aye.
Student
And-
Board Member?
Sorry.
Aye.
Sorry, Ross. Thank you, Lori. Superintendent Kitamura, you want to move on with E3? Frank?
Correct. Thank you for granting the permission to have this heard in open, beyond consent and into open session of the board. I'm looking at item E3. E3 talks about vendors, the amounts of money spent for the vendors and the funding sources. I just need to be educated here, and maybe this is something that staff isn't ready to talk about, or can, at least maybe they can explain it to my satisfaction tonight. But we have two large vendor items. One is the California Valued Trust at $300,000, and we have PG&E. We have to pay the gas and electric to operate our schools at over $100,000. The funding source is what I need to know more about. We're using LCFF-based funds for that. Now, my understanding is that there's limitations and strings attached to the use of LCFF funds. Now, is it appropriate to use funds for such as classified employees' health insurance, or should we use other sources for funds? Because I remember last year's discussion that during negotiations, we were limited on what we could do with these types of funds. So I just need an explanation.
So the base funds is what we used to call general fund. And so LCFF encompasses our entire budget, and it's made up of base funds, which used to be general funds, and then the supplemental and concentration funds. And so base funds, being what used to be general funds, can be used for things that we pay throughout the district, such as health insurance or utilities.
So supplemental funds are not, right?
Supplemental funds are not. Those are the funds that are generated by our unduplicated student population, and those funds are to be used for services on top of what's provided by the base funds in order to help them achieve and excel and to close the achievement gap.
And those are the ones we haven't been able to use before for salary enhancement or other negotiated items.
Correct, because it has to be additional service on top of what we already provide.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now I'm going to need a motion on E3.
E3.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Hanel. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Thank you. So now we'll go on to our F items, which are discussion and action items. F1 is about the high school district Measure 1 and elementary school district Measure I and L bond projects. So what we're going to do, I know we have a lot of people here to speak to this item, or parts of this, part of this item. We're going to hear a presentation by staff first, and then I'll turn it over to public comment, and we'll chat a little bit more before we get to that, when we get to that stage. So you're on, Rick.
Thank you. Good evening, President Jay, board members, and Superintendent Kitamura. Once again, we're excited to talk about Measure I and L and moving forward with bond projects. Tonight, we have brought to the board projects based on our facilities master plan and the implementation plan that was approved in May. The projects presented are not inclusive of all prioritized bond projects, nor does it allocate, excuse me, all funds from each bond measure. These projects are recommendations to the board for consideration and for direction to staff to proceed with planning, design, and ultimately the construction or implementation. The projects, if approved tonight, will be brought back to the board for approval of the individual contracts for the implementation or construction to begin. Other projects in the implementation plan, such as classrooms at Montgomery High School, makerspace at Cook, and other general site improvements will be brought back to the board for consideration at future meetings. Additional projects are not dependent on the completion of these current projects presented tonight. As we have discussed several times, through the facilities master plan process, we have approximately $1.2 billion of identified need throughout Santa Rosa City Schools, with $229 million of available funding through measures I and L. We have additional opportunities through funding sources such as Prop 39 to augment those dollars, but those are even smaller numbers as we've discussed. Through the bond program, we're really looking to provide warm, safe, and dry learning spaces, technology to meet our educational needs and goals, and school repair measures in support of student success. Through the planning process, an implementation plan was created and ultimately approved last May along with the facilities master plan. The plan worksheet, it was also included in your board packet for tonight's board agenda item. The plan outlined projects that can be accomplished with our existing amount of funding through the bond measures, including other additional funding such as Prop 39 energy efficiency funding from the state. The implementation plan shows projects in 3 bands: infrastructure needs, educational needs, and site-specific needs. When looking at the worksheet, it's important to remember that the elementary school district with Measure L does not have site-specific needs due to the amount of funding that they have available to them. It stops right after the educational needs. The following list represents projects from the 3 bands: infrastructure, education, and site-specific needs that are outlined in the implementation plan. These projects are being brought to the board for consideration of approval for work to begin in the summer of 2017. As we have learned from our existing projects, labor issues and availability of contractors is at a premium for our area and Sonoma County as a whole. It is our intention, with your approval, to move forward to do the needed work to facilitate these projects for a start date of summer 2017, or as warranted by the scope and sequence of the project. We would like to have the projects not requiring DSA approval to be ready in the winter of 2017 for bidding. And for those projects requiring DSA approval, we'd like to submit those as quickly as possible to start that process. As we've discussed, DSA approval can routinely take between 6 and 18 months. So now we're going to go through the projects as presented tonight, starting with roofing. Earlier this year, the district did a comprehensive roofing assessment that identified approximately $35 million in need throughout all of our campuses in Santa Rosa City Schools. Many of the roofs at all sites are beyond repair and their useful life. Many roofs have been repeatedly patched and have not undergone comprehensive roof replacement or repairs. Immediate attention will be focused on roofs that are beyond repair. What we're going to do with that plan is look at roofs at all school sites and determine which ones need to be replaced immediately through the process of the evaluation and from what we know from our maintenance and operations department and from the sites themselves to identify the neediest areas, and then prioritize those and bring those back to the board for approval for the summer projects to get the construction documents and scope of work defined. The same is true about mechanical and HVAC, heating and air conditioning. Many of our units are beyond their useful life, and one of the constant complaints that I know M&O hears on a regular basis in the spring for air conditioning and in the fall for heat. Planning for implementation of new systems will include the use of Prop 39 funds as warranted to offset the impact to the bond program budget. This is also an issue for all sites. Once identified and planned, the information will be presented to the board as well as posted on the bond website of the schools receiving the work. The third project presented tonight is the Comstock campus. This is to address the programmatic needs of both the Comstock campus as well as the CCLA campus with the future expansion of the CCLA campus. This will allow the necessary classroom space for a TK-8 for CCLA and give much needed space to Comstock as the campuses continue to grow. Construction timelines will be provided after the design documents are completed and additional needs are determined through review. The fourth item on the list is Pioneer Lights. At the June 22nd, 2016 board meeting, Axia Architects was approved for the design of this project. Pioneer High School is the only high school in the district without stadium lights. I did, in the board packet, lay out a timeline for the construction of those lights to be completed by early September 2017. The fifth item on the list is the Maria Correa High School athletic field. At the August 10th board meeting, staff discussed the current status of the athletic field and the steps taken to address the issues at the current time. To provide a long-term solution, we believe the best course of action is to replace the grass surface with artificial field turf, a new synthetic all-weather track surface, and a new press box on the home field side of the stadium. Also noted, Maria Carrillo High School is the only high school in the district without a turf field. These are not the only projects that can be brought forward for planning and design. Additional projects can be discussed and considered. The projects being brought forward for consideration are to meet 2017 construction opportunities and timelines. We'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay, before I turn it over to the board, we're going to have the public, give them a chance to speak. I have 8 speaker cards on this topic. Speakers have allowed 3 minutes each. With all the people here and a long agenda ahead of us, we ask if there's a lot of repetition, you can sum things up. We know that you're here because you really care. There's strength in numbers. So let's begin with Tom Chang. There's 3 places to speak, that podium, and you can come down here if you like. Mr. Tom Chang, and he's followed by Britt Van Geysen.
Okay. First of all, thank you for your time, President Jay, Superintendent, other board members. I just appreciate having a few moments to speak to you from 2 different perspectives. I'm a parent of children at Maria Carrillo, so I have that hat I wear. I have 3 children that currently play or have had the opportunity to play and privileged to play at Maria Carrillo High School soccer team. And I've watched through the years them go through playing on the field, seeing my older son have significant injuries from twisting his ankle and being out for several weeks and just trying to get him back to good health. But on my other hat is that I'm actually a physician in the community. I work in an orthopedic group at Redwood Orthopedic Surgery Associates. And my colleagues and I in that group have seen numerous injuries from just bad field conditions. And these range from, different areas of injuries to the lower leg and knee injuries where they've had ACL or collateral ligament injuries. We've seen multiple ankle sprains. We've treated and fixed ankle fractures, broken foot bones that needed to be fixed. And these are devastating injuries. Some of these are significantly limiting for many years to come, especially in their growing years. They involve growth plates, as well as the fact that every person that has an ankle fracture absolutely will have a quicker incidence of ankle arthritis well documented in literature in their lifetime. So with everything else being equal, whether they're fixed surgically or they're not, they will always have a quicker incidence of painful, debilitating arthritis within 20 years. And that just changes their life. So unfortunately, I think we have a responsibility to provide a safe environment for these children. You know, and I'm personally invested with my children, but obviously you can see the passion and the commitment of the families and the students behind you. And I just think that we owe them that responsibility, because we have unavoidable injuries in sport, that's clear. But if you have the chance to control the environment a little bit better and have a situation where you can control some of those injuries, it's very important to make that decision to do so. The American Journal of Sports Medicine has an interesting article. They actually compared collegiate soccer players playing on turf fields and playing on grass fields. And it's very interesting. They found that 60% of the injuries occur on grass fields, or 40% occur on turf fields. And obviously there's variations in the turf versus the footing on grass. But if you take in consideration potholes and uneven surfaces, that exponentially increases the chances of injury. So I just want to share a little perspective from the medical side of what we see, how we treat these patients, and just injuries that can be prevented. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Next up is Britt Van Geysen, followed by Deborah LaPrath. Mr. Van Geysen?
Hello there. Thank you very much for your time. Mr. Carl, thank you very much, or Director Carl, for coming out and taking a look at our fields. I think that's vital to see. As the product of Sonoma County Public Education, it was my pride to move my family back here and to run them through the public education system in our fair city. What I was shocked at, and I'm still shocked at, is the fact that we have let the facilities slip so far. And the field at Maria Creo and the practice fields at Maria Creo have been stunning to me in their lack of maintenance and their forethought. On an annualized basis, I have been forced to email people all up and down the chain to get the water turned back on when we know exactly when we're going to begin to use those fields. Furthermore, with the advent of the field being taken away, the stadium field, and then with the approval of everybody saying that it was going to be ready, and when we clearly saw that the sod laying was inept, that the fill underneath contained glass, it is not my belief that there was an intent on that part. I think the follow-through from those giving directions to those implementing the tasks is where the fault lies. I run a business. If I was giving a task to an employee and they failed, it would be my responsibility. So I look at the chain of command here and say that we, both the parents, the administrators, and everybody in the district has failed our students by not providing a safe playing field that facilitates their ability to pursue their athletic endeavors. I have a child who is going to be a scholarship athlete in a D1 school. I will absolutely not allow a prolonged decision by this district to ignore unfair and absolutely destructive playing surfaces to destroy her career. I am the product also, I am also the father of a special needs child, and I am relentless. I will continue to pursue this. I understand that there will be state people, but if you give us the right and you approve this, I guarantee you we're not stopping here. At least I'm not stopping. I want to thank you all very much for your time. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Deborah LaPrath, followed by Corey O'Donnell. Hold on. Thank you.
Are we up? There we go. Last time I spoke at the board meeting, I spoke about a salary increase for teachers and years of no pay raises and a handful of furlough days, and thankfully the board did the right thing then. We also had to talk about the decades-old coaching salaries, but that's another issue for another day that has not yet been remedied. Tonight we're here to ask you to do the right thing again for our student athletes at Maria Creo High School. Everyone knows we're the only school without turf, without a proper, safe stadium field, and that's not even addressing the atrocious practice fields that we start on every August. Those fields are as hard as cement in some areas and riddled with crop circles of grass that are 8 inches higher or more. We were working on corner kicks today, and I couldn't even see my kids' ankles in that. and that's a difficult way to practice corner kicks. As Tom Chang stated earlier, we are riddled with injuries because of these fields. Last week I had 8 players unable to train for almost a week because of ankles or knee injuries, and no doubt those are due to our practice conditions. Most people, I'm sure, saw the recent Press Democrats article and showing the pictures of the real issues that we've been dealing with at Maria Carrillo. And some people have called the fields playable, and I question the difference between playable and safe. I don't need to reiterate the entire article. We saw the pictures and the patchwork sod that Britt talked about, and the soil filled with glass, plastic, and rocks that took us about 60 seconds or less to pick out. Neither one of those conditions or those solutions helped our conditions be safe or playable. My other concern is we're not just talking about our athletes. We're talking about a field used for school, for athletics, for physical education, students who are trying to graduate with 20 PE credits. That's a teaching station for those physical educators and those kids taking PE classes, and that's been ignored as well. Once again, like Britt mentioned, our field was shut down in August for almost 7 weeks. We couldn't do a lot of our activities we wanted to do on there. For what? To be unsafe again and to have no real solutions. Maintenance talked about that this was a recent issue, that they've just discovered last year that this was a problem. Jay and I, who've been coaching there for 2 decades since the schools opened in '96, realize that this is not a new situation. It's something we've been dealing with for over a decade. I could go back to the Press Democrat and find articles written all the way back in 2005 that talk about our fields and the atrocious way that they're taken care of. I have an article here from September 2010 when we had an out-of-state team come and see us from Tennessee. They talk about Maria Carrillo being the best team they've ever seen, but in the next sentence they say, and this is written by Howard Senzel, his opinion of the Pumas field was just the opposite. "It's the worst soccer field I've seen," he said. "It's as bad as the rough at a U.S. Open golf tournament. It's so thick, it's so slow, we were hardly able to move the ball. I was surprised it was in such bad shape. It's like a farmland." That's a quote from 2010 Press Democrat. It's been a problem for a long time, and I'm left shaking my head, wondering once again, where's the parity? Why don't they care about the safety of our kids? Final thoughts, I feel like I've got the right program with the right kids and the right caring families, but I'm in the wrong district. I'm just hoping you do the right thing this time.
Next up is Corey O'Donnell, followed by Jeremy Dillatore.
Good evening. Thanks for the time to speak tonight. My name is Corey O'Donnell, and I have a son and a daughter at Maria Carrillo, and both play soccer. On their behalf, I strongly encourage your approval of Carrillo's athletic fields tonight. As you know from other speakers before me, countless communications from school administrators and parents and recent press coverage, the condition of the field has been deteriorating for years and is unsafe. As part of your approval today, I also encourage you to direct district staff to accelerate the proposed timeline so there's a possibility that construction could be completed before the next school year. While I acknowledge and understand that the state's review process is not within the district's control, preparation of the design and construction documents are, and they can be done within a shorter time frame. The statement in your board materials that the current issues with the fields have been addressed to allow play is absolutely not correct. As Deb and others have already noted, the field is closed, again. It is hard to imagine that the significant issues with the field will be resolved within the next few weeks. Not only does this immediately affect women's soccer and football, men's soccer begins in November. Last year, the boys had to resort to playing on the blacktop because of the ridiculous conditions of both the practice field and the stadium field. We feel very fortunate that no one was badly injured while trying to play full-speed soccer on blacktop, though there were plenty of bruises and scrapes and sore body parts and wounded wrists from protecting their faces from hitting the blacktop. For games, the torn-up field, muddy stadium field greatly affected the quality of play, not to mention being so unsafe and so unpredictable that the blacktop was deemed the better surface for practices. It is critical that a plan is put in place now to address the rest of this school year. Your approval today of the field upgrades is a crucial step towards improving field safety for Korea's students, athletes and non-athletes alike. But it is essential that you and district staff address the current conditions establish a plan for the remainder of the school year, and accelerate construction so we're not in this position again next year. Thank you.
Next up is Jeremy DeLatorre, and then followed by, I think it's Herbie Polk. Hi.
Good evening, welcome. You've seen me before. Got the same song and dance, so I'm not going to go into it tonight, but I'm a concerned parent, concerned coach, concerned board member of our Puma Athletics Boosters, and we urge you to vote yes tonight on our proposed stadium improvement and urge you to move along that project as quickly as possible. I've said everything I could say over the last 3 years trying to get this to happen, and I'm going to use the rest of my time to hear a voice that truly matters and should hit home, and that's Class 2018, Cameron DeLatorre.
Hi, my name is Cameron DeLatorre. I'm class of 2018, and today I urge you to vote yes on the construction of our track and field so that my friends and I can have a safe place to learn and compete on, and also have school pride and not have our field seen as a joke. I urge you to move on this fast, as I am class of 2018, and I do not want to waste my senior year watching the stadium be built. I would rather be competing and having fun with my friends on it. Make Creo whole again. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Herbie Polk, followed by Eric Olson, or I think it says Kristen Reed.
Hi, my name is Herbie Polk, and thank you. I'm a volunteer coach at the school, also a parent. I have had a son go through Maria Carrillo. He's at Arizona State now. He was a sprinter, track and field athlete. I have a daughter who's a sophomore. She's ran at Maria Carrillo the last 2 years. And over the course of 6 years myself, I've seen the fields deteriorate, not just the track, but the football fields, the soccer fields as well. It is a danger. Last track and field season, our first 3 track meets, there were pretty bad winners. Fortunately for Maria Carrillo track athletes, they didn't have to run at Maria Carrillo in the rain, sprinting over hurdles, out of blocks and spikes. That would have made things more dangerous for them. I really encourage the board to vote to approve the upgrades of this project. The students deserve it, and I think I can speak for the student body, the parent body, and also the faculty that they'll take care of the equipment. I think looking at this process, everyone understands that equipment and these type of athletic facilities don't come easy. They're expensive. And I myself and some of the students that I mentor and guide always make a concerted effort to clean things up, pick up trash, put away things, and try to take care of the fields. Anytime we see someone doing something that is unacceptable on the fields, in the area, we say something, we clean things up. And I see students doing that all the time, and so I applaud them for that. I know with this upgrade, it will be taken care of. It will be a great investment. I think the students deserve it, the school deserve it, and I love to see it happen as a parent, as a community member, as a coach, mentor, and a guide. Thank you for your time, and go Pumas.
Eric Olson.
Good evening. My name is Eric Olson. I'm a teacher at Montgomery High School, and I'm speaking on the third item of the proposed projects, the Comstock and CCLA campus design and construction. As Santa Rosa City Schools begins work on the major projects to be funded by our first bond offering, many members of the Facilities Master Plan Committee at Montgomery, which I served on, were concerned. It is our understanding that each project was given an IOQ score, which we use to prioritize the many needs of the district. The third of your 5 proposed projects, the modernization of the Comstock and the Cesar Chavez Language Academy campuses, piqued our attention. And while we hope that the CCLA modernization will be funded through elementary bond money and thus not affect the high school district funds, the Comstock campus modernization project will require significant funding out of Measure I monies. This project was given an IOQ score of 85, and by contrast, Montgomery High School's gym modernization stands at 97. Our classroom modernization, which consists of multiple classrooms on broken foundations and a number of portables more than 5 years past their usable lives, at 94, and our campus improvements generally stand at an 88. It is for this reason we voice our concerns over how these projects are being prioritized. If Montgomery High School had the highest IOQ scores in the district, why are they not first in line for campus modernization? This is especially perplexing when we consider that improvements are being made at Comstock to accommodate students that are not yet there, while, as will be shown in the next item, F2, Montgomery has the greatest number of overfilled classrooms in the district, with over, well, exactly actually, 40 classes of over 33 students enrolled. We respectfully ask the board to withhold approval of the Comcast and CCLA project until our concerns have been addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last speaker card I have is Katara Gonzalez and Candace Hiegas.
Hi, I'm Katana Gonzalez, and I'm a junior at Maria Creo, and me and Candace are going to be speaking about, we're going to be speaking for the Maria Creo women's soccer team, and I just wanted to say that, as has been said a lot, we go down to the fields and we pick up like the glass and the rocks in the soil, and it's really like not safe to play in, and it's really unfortunate because high school soccer is supposed to be really fun, and we look forward to like home games and having people come out and watch, and we're prevented from having home games now, and it's really unfortunate. And since high school soccer women's is moving to winter, it's going to be really hard to play on our grass in the winter when it's raining. It's just going to be a muddy mess, and that's really hard to play in.
I'm Candace, and I'm a captain on the women's soccer team. I just wanted to reiterate the safety concerns. I know many friends who have slipped or stepped in potholes and torn ligaments in their knees or sprained their ankles. And from the point of view of an athlete as well, I think it changes our style of play. We're not able to play how we want to because of the bumps and the constant concern in the back of our heads that we could get a season-ending injury or an injury that could affect our careers for the rest, affect us for the rest of our careers. And it would be much appreciated if this concern was addressed sooner than later, because it will only get worse.
Thank you to all our speakers tonight. I'm now going to close the public comment portion of this item, and I'm going to turn it back over to my board for questions and comments. I'm going to start with Director Kristoff.
Yeah, I'd like to start with a few comments and maybe come back to some questions in a little bit. First of all, I appreciate everybody coming out here. I know we have several schools represented, obviously Maria Carrillo, Montgomery High School, Pioneer High School. This is, for me, I hope I'm speaking for the rest of the board, an exercise in democracy and transparency. We want people to give us feedback. I always encourage people to speak their voices. It's very, very important to me to find out what people are thinking and where they're coming from. To make a good decision, I have to hear as many different voices as I possibly can. The downside of the reality of what we're facing here today is the fact that there is a lot of competition for the money we have. It sounds like a lot of money, $240 million or $235 million. but it's a drop in the bucket. You could build one new high school for that amount right now. So the difficulty that we're having and we're going to have for a while, so the process becomes very, very important to get it right for all of us, is that we're going to have to see with these numbers and with other input and board decision making, which projects are going to be funded and when, which ones are not going to be funded. In reality, you know, there's supposedly $1.2 billion worth of needs in the district. I see it more like $4 billion worth of needs. So our bonds are inadequate in a sense. We've been underfunded not just for the last several years because of the Great Recession, but because California education has been underfunded for a very, very long time. What this means is that we're going to continue to struggle, and we're going to need to pass more bonds. We actually have a state bond now to help with facilities development, Prop 51. I would encourage you to vote for that if you're a voting age. But that's only $9 billion. If we have $1 billion worth of needs here, and there's 1,000 school districts in California, you start to get the idea. I'm sorry that the fields aren't in great shape. I'm sorry that classrooms aren't in great shape. I don't like rats or cockroaches myself. But we have a process here. And again, it's, you know, really the way we work together, knowing that you've got at least 3 different schools represented here, and how we come to these decisions is still a work in progress. There's a lot of work that's been done with the facilities master plan. It's not the greatest reading in the world, but it really is a starting point for a discussion. And it's something I would urge the community to read, to get into, and to help us with this process, because it's tough. It's tough for staff, and I know that. It's tough for our superintendent, and I know it's tough for the other board members as well. But again, I'll go back to my first point. Your voice is important, and I appreciate the fact that you came out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Director Hano.
Thank you. I'd also like to reiterate a big thank you, especially to the students, for coming out here. And I'd like to go back a little bit for some understanding. First of all, my understanding was when Carrillo was built, the staff wanted a turf field, not a synthetic field. Secondly, the great downturn recession in our economy caused by the manipulation of the banks, which you've studied in history, caused this district for the next 5 or 6 years to cut 24% from our budget. So quite frankly, sitting up here, we didn't really know what we should do. We had to get rid of all the librarians. Your schools don't have librarians. We went to reduction in custodians. We went to reduction in maintenance because we didn't want to close the schools down because we wanted to keep you in schools so you'd be in your classrooms. And it was a really, really tough process. So when that school comes in 2010 from out of state, it's another thing to understand. We are 49th out of 50 in funding in the United States, out of the 50 states, okay? Probably in 2010, we were 50th. So a visiting team coming in from out of state, their fields are great. I go visit my grandkids in Texas, their fields are pristine. They get more funding than we do. So we've really, in a way, taken a hard hit here. And it really gives me great pleasure to vote yes on funding your synthetic field, because I think, heavens yes, it's about time. Another consideration is the speaker who talked about Montgomery High School. I would like to also know about those bungalows at Montgomery High School. Maybe we should be getting started on that process because we need to get those. They're all excited back there. So I'm just bringing that up to see a little more analysis on that because it wasn't brought forward, and we want to get those addressed probably as soon as possible. So can you comment on that too, please? Thank you. And again, thanks for being here.
Did you expect Rick to comment now, or what did you want?
It's whatever is your wish. Sure. Yeah,
All right,
let's
so-
wait for all the speakers. Yeah,
I'll make a note.
Okay, Director Carl.
I'm unclear. Are we making statements and then asking questions?
Right
or
now,
what are we doing?
I asked people to ask questions and comments. Some people have chosen to say a comment. It's up to you.
I have some questions. In the past, we've had a facilities committee that has dealt with projects as they come forward, and I've sat on that committee a number of times. One of the things that concerned me the most in those that I was pretty strident about were soft costs. We do have a limited amount of money. I think we need to be really vigilant about use of our money, and I'm hopeful in the bidding process that we actually do better, and we often do better than the estimates that we get on the front end. So these numbers that we have, for instance, Pioneer Stadium lights at $2 million, when the estimate, that's the estimate that we get from the architect with a number of soft costs attached to it. When you actually get the bid in place, we may get it for less than that. What I don't understand and what I'm not getting in the way of information at this stage is that breakdown with respect to soft costs and what we're doing to minimize those to the greatest degree. And I'll talk about one of them. One of them that we rely on very heavily is architects, and we've got some wonderful architects in town that really help us out. But as a percentage of the project, those numbers can be all over the map. They can be from 6 to 8%. They can be as high as 12 to 15%. And so I would like to see those on a project-by-project basis so that we understand those, and when we're not comfortable with them, that we negotiate them. I think that's fairly important. Second, I do have a question about Montgomery and the classrooms. Obviously part of this is balancing because you can't do it all at once. We'd love to bid everything out that we've got in our facilities master plan right now. Given the state of construction help in Sonoma County right now, I think we'd find a lot of contractors that are not in a position to be able to get the subs and all the workers to be able to do all of that, so that's not possible. So we do have to pick some on the front end, and I think that you've done a very good job of dealing with that. I'm going to support the roofing portion of it. I'm going to support the mechanical and HVAC portion. I'm going to support the Pioneer High School stadium lights and the Maria Carrillo Field. And I think, I don't think there's an issue with respect to the CCLA campus. I'm trying to understand Comstock because we are looking at it for increase in size of CCLA when it becomes K-8, and we've got a 3-year lead time. It's unclear to me how much wiggle room we have on that and how we balance that off against what needs to be done with respect to Montgomery. Can you give me some help on that?
Sure. So on the Comstock or Montgomery, either, both, or neither could go forward. We looked at the Comstock campus with the growth or potential growth of planned growth of CCLA from the current status through an 8th grade model, and to start the planning for that. That doesn't mean that construction would start immediately on the Comstock campus. We would gauge that with how the school is growing. We can certainly, it wasn't beat over because it's a better site or anything over Montgomery. It was just one of the projects that we brought forward, knowing that we can add and bring back at any time for the planning stages of these projects. We do have to keep in mind the amount of available funding versus the ability to get the construction done in the time period of funding. So that's why one of the reasons we chose that project, because of the educational need of that, knowing that although Montgomery is by no means perfect or desirable, we're not having that issue there. We know we have major issues with buildings at that site, with the bungalows in the back that need to be addressed. And that was one of the reasons why I even mentioned it at the beginning of the report, that it is something that we can look at, bring back, and start the whole design and planning process for that as well.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. I don't know if I've got 3 other votes to deal with that, but I'd like to spend some time from staff time on that and understand whether we have some restrictions relative to architects as well. I don't know if we, running out somehow. I think that we ought to be able to find the people to do that work. So that is something that I'd like to see. You know, what resonates very strongly with me is the safety issue. And, you know, this board has done a lot of things relative to safety in sports, concussions being one of the most important ones to me. And staff has really responded well to that. And I really want to respond to this as well, because it is a safety issue. When it all comes down to it, regardless of whether anybody's opinion is that, you know, of any particular field anywhere, or people's tact in the way they want to approach the issue, we're all on the same page, which is that we want students to have the best facilities, to stay uninjured, to be able to qualify to move their careers forward if they want, and even if they don't. I thought one of the points that made was very important. Just the regular old phys ed is something where we want to prevent, or we want to provide safety. In talking to the folks that I've talked to with respect to Maria Carrillo High School, there isn't a soul that doesn't believe the same way, whether it's at the district office or elsewhere. And I appreciate the one comment about the fact that the intent issue that one speaker talked about, because I don't think anybody here has an intent to do anything other than make it as best as possible. We have been constrained, obviously, to some degree, but I think that we are better suited not to try to find who's to blame, but it's to move forward, and tonight we get to do that, which is to move forward and do it reasonably. I do believe that we ought to take a look at the timeline, though. I think that when I look at what's projected here in terms of timeline, one of them is picking an architect or designer that's going to be the architect's selection for the design and scope of it. I think one of the things we ought to put in that selection request is you give us how quickly you can get it done. And I appreciate that, but these meetings get long when people add those in there as well. I think it's critical if we essentially say to them, this is a bellwether portion of our selection. If you tell us we can get this done by mid-November, and you tell us it could be done by the end of December, and functionally there isn't any difference, and maybe even if there is a little difference in price, I want to pick the person who can get it done in November, because obviously the quicker that we can get it done in the DSA where we lose control, then, you know, we can do whatever we can do. But those areas where we can control it, let's try to tighten that as quickly as possible. And it really relates to having talked with the folks at Maria Carrillo, understanding what their scheduling is. I think everybody realizes we're going to lose some time in there. We're going to lose some sports. We're going to have to be doing some things in some other places. But I think that if we're in a position where they can operate through about February of this year, and we can get the design work into DSA and really stress whatever we can do at the state level, using whatever elected officials we have to help, whatever pressure we can bring to bear. We've got a period basically running from about February to August where we'd love to be in construction. I think it's a little bit of a dream to believe it'll be March, but the further up that we can move that, the better. And I know staff gets it, but let's make it a priority as well. I think that's it.
Director Christoph, you want to follow up?
You have some questions. First is about process. I've asked this question before, and I'm very comfortable with what we're doing right now, you know, having this conversation as a board, because my concern was always that the board has the responsibility and should be making that final decision. But in this action that you've done to bring these items forward, it's an executive committee that things kind of filter up. You take a look at the facilities master plan. Who was in that room? How many people were there that made these recommendations?
The executive committee, through the formation of the facilities master plan and the input phases up through approval and moving this forward, were representatives from the maintenance operations department, technology department, including cabinet members, the superintendent, and then our architects, QKA, that were responsible for the creation and the implementation plan for the facilities master plan.
Okay, so there's like a dozen people that made this recommendation. Yeah. Okay. How much money have we spent from the bonds already?
Roughly, we've committed about $25 million, maybe a little bit more than that.
From both bonds?
From both bonds, combined.
Both bonds, okay. And then the Comstock funding, is that I or L? Is that elementary or secondary?
Excuse me, sorry.
Is the funding for the Comstock remodeling that you're proposing for the CCLA, is that elementary money? Or
For the Comstock portion of the design and build, it would be secondary money.
Well, what's the breakdown, Rick, between the two?
The majority of work that we need to move forward with construction is on the Comstock side. That would be the new 2-story building.
Okay.
And the other amenities that are on the Comstock side of the campus, which would be the west side of the existing campus.
Okay. And I'm very glad you're open or amenable to board suggestions regarding projects too. I too, I found, I did this independently, but when I looked at Montgomery's scores, and I know the building or I know the plant very well, and I'm going, you know, if it comes between a choice, you know, Montgomery's right up there for me. It's very, very important. I have no problem supporting these things, but every time we lop one of these things off, you know, it's there's more money gone from the bond. So, you know, I want to take this very, very seriously. Everything here, to me, I can support tonight, except the Comstock. Not that I don't support it, but I just don't, it feels too amorphous for me. I just don't know. I know it's at half capacity now. That was a school that was underpopulated for a very long time. There was a separate charter school on the campus. I just feel like I don't have enough information to commit to $16 million. So what I would propose is that we break Comstock out of this and vote on it separately. I can support the other items.
Director Pugh.
Thank you. I'm thankful that you all took time out of your busy days to be here on this important item before the board. So I thank the participation of the speakers. And I also thank the work of our committee on this. We're committing about almost $50 million in an action item before the board tonight. I believe the money will be well invested into the futures of our children and protect our kids on the fields. I like Director Carl's thoughts about tightening the timeline as much as possible. There are things that can be done. It would be appreciated if they were. I am also apologetic in regards to how long it takes to get things through the system, but we're pretty busy and we're not actually staffed as much as we would like to be to make sure things can get done as quickly as we'd like. So I anticipate there'll probably be other debates down the road, but I am certainly comfortable with item F1 and look forward to supporting it as it moves before the board. Thank you.
Jen, no. So it has all been said except for a few brilliant things that I'm going to add to it. I think it's really, really important to respect the process. And it's really easy when you have a room full of people from one school with valid ideas and complaints and concerns coming before us. But I can tell you there are other people in the district, other schools and everything, that's just not their turn tonight. And we have these great, your project, really, really important. Don't want to demean that at all. But I do want to address some comments made about perhaps we've neglected you, we don't care, we've let things slide so much. With the financial crisis in 07 and 08, our school district is not going to come back to full funding formula we had prior to that until 2021. What's making it possible for us to even talk about this tonight is the fact that we passed a bond. You all passed a bond measure. That's really how California public education is funded now, sad but true. So what happens at a night like tonight, we have people with their own interests coming forward. You're doing your jobs. That's exactly what you should be doing. As a board member, I have to weigh the jobs across the district. That crisis was so bad, as Director Hanel started to talk about before, we no longer have librarians in our district. You students know all about this. It affects you every day. We didn't lay off teachers. We didn't raise class sizes. What we did was we deferred maintenance. And that has come at a very, very high cost. And that's what you all are here talking about tonight, and that's what we need to address. As a board member, we have to address that all across the district. I like the idea of tightening timelines because it's important for kids to be able to play on the field that before they graduate, they want to play on their own fields. I get all that. If we're going to tighten timelines, I want to tighten timelines for Pioneer High School and their lights. I think it's really important to show support to them. They didn't have the benefit of the district giving them loans to pay for the rest of their lights because of the economic downturn. So I think it's now time to make that right while we make this right. So I think these are things that we really have to pay attention to as board members. The details, nasty little details, but somebody's got to pay attention to them. So I just wanted to make that comment. And I don't want to see Comstock removed from the timeline at all. I'd like to see us find another way to make this timeline work for both Montgomery and Comstock. I don't think it is either or. I think we can find a way to make that work. So,
I'll make a motion.
Question.
okay, I'm not done.
Okay.
Oh,
no,
I'm
I
sorry,
don't-
you
I
go
don't
ahead.
want
You know
to
what, you should do it because you're probably referring to what I'm saying. So Larry's
Well,
question.
I
and
just
Bill.
want to know, how can we make Montgomery work? Do we need to pass
Well, there's a
anything
lot of
tonight?
professionals here. There's a lot of professionals here that are going to come back to us, I imagine, and tell us how that's going to work.
Well, Rick, did you answer, you answered that question I asked?
You could certainly add Montgomery to the list of
Yeah,
projects tonight.
I've asked, I want to make a motion, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Good. That's my answer. Thank you.
So,
And I also am just fine with Comstock, after you made that remark, that Comstock's not going to be built way out in the future. It's going to happen as the needs occur.
Yeah, it's important to remember that tonight does not start the project tomorrow. Tonight is giving guidance so we can start the work we need to do to get the architects lined up, to get the contracts lined up, to get the scope of work lined up, to get the detailed documents done. That's what this starts.
Right.
We didn't want to start projects that we thought were important, spend months and months on them, bring them to the board, and then they weren't supported because there was other more important issues that had to come before you. So this merely starts that process.
Thank you. And I hope Mr. Carl put in his motion I like that timeline idea that you talked about with the field in regard to safety.
are you going to make the motion, Bill, right now?
I was.
So just let me finish with one comment. The fact that we're all talking about Maria Carrillo High School's field tonight is a demonstration of how important it is to this board to get that done. This is the first night where we're actually talking about what are the first projects we're going to do when we move forward. And that has been something that's been on our timeline all along. We just didn't have a meeting. For us to get something on the agenda to vote on it, we're at that point now. And I'm very happy we are. I'm very proud of the progress our district is making, I think, in a very thoughtful and efficient and correct manner. So with that, Director Carl.
Okay, I will move the F1 item as recommended by staff and ask that you add an analysis of accelerating the Montgomery classroom and bring that back to us in a subsequent meeting. I'm not going to put a timeline on that. And then I'd like to speak to the motion after there's a second.
I'll second that motion.
Second.
So that was moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Close.
Point of clarification.
Ron.
Okay, I still don't know, when I'm saying $16 million for Comstock, I looked at the facilities master plan. Is this just a blank check? I don't know what I'm voting for.
I'd like to speak to this. So what this will do is move forward the fact that we will take a look at the design. You're still going to have an opportunity to vote on basically each of these in terms of the design and the cost and say yay or nay. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, we're really.
I feel very comfortable with that.
Okay, yeah, we don't want to waste time. We want to get these design projects in and then give the board an opportunity to give us feedback now so we don't waste our time on designs that we don't need to do because the board doesn't approve of them. This merely gives us the guidance to go ahead and start these projects, but they're all going to come back individually to the board for approval.
Can I speak to the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was made to leave everybody in there, including Comstock, because this is just the beginning, and I, like President Jay, want to respect the process that's occurred up to this point. That doesn't mean that Comstock will be built, and we're going to see the stuff come back. We're also going to see some stuff relative to Montgomery, and we'll look at those items. And as I indicated before, I'm very interested in costs associated with those items. And this is a 30,000-foot analysis right now. The board's going to be in a position where it gets down on the ground in the next few months, and that analysis can be tightened, and we can figure out where we are. But this gets that up and running, and with a measured number that staff can handle and consultants can presumably handle. I didn't put in the motion with respect to the timeline on Maria Carrillo because I believe you heard that, and I think you heard it from a number of folks, and I don't think it's necessary because I think you'll do it. And obviously with respect to Pioneer, that's fine, although the timeline in Pioneer is set up to beat the next football season. So as long as we beat the next football season on that timeline, then I think we're fine. Because we're not going to do it before then, and as long as we get lights for the first game that they've got at home, then we've done what we need to do. No.
So I need a roll call vote.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student member?
Aye. Unanimous. We're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm sorry, I think we're gonna start calling the meeting back to order any second now. I said we're going to get together, but we're missing one member, so I just want to wait another minute. Okay, everybody, now we're going to move on to item F2, which is an action item, staffing and course enrollment update.
Thank you, President Jay. This is an item coming to the board as a discussion item. And this is the beginning of kind of a long-term discussion as we look at what can we do in Santa Rosa City Schools to improve how we staff and how we get the offerings for our students in the district. Oops, I got to click on two machines now. There we go. And a lot of the information provided here was provided when I brought this item up last school year, and I want to reiterate the fact that the most important thing that happens in our district is direct instruction to our students. And there's some key impacts on that that need to be acknowledged beyond what's included on the slide. We know that hiring the most qualified, credentialed folks to provide the instruction to our students is key. Having the best classrooms, as we discussed earlier at the other item, having a school environment that is great for students and for staff, and also making sure that we staff appropriately, and not just the people in front of the class or with the students, but making sure that the number of students in those classes is optimum for the instruction in the classes. And so I include this information on here. Oops, you skipped ahead of me, sorry. It's okay. I include this information on here just to kind of share with the board that from my perspective now, I was able, I had the privilege of being a principal at Slater for a long time, and I did a lot of hiring and a lot of scheduling, but at a middle school level, it's certainly not as complex as you see at the high school level. But some of the same things exist there when you're looking at and changes in enrollment, retirements, other things that happen that can impact the programs you offer, new offerings, and to see how those evolve over time and how you increase enrollment in those classes. Like Mandarin was a new adventure that we, started at Slater, and it's kind of evolved over time, and it's something we'll be discussing as we move forward in the school year. So all of this is there to show that in my new position, I have to take a kind of broader perspective on what happens with staffing, not only about who we hire and the hiring process and the onboarding process to make sure that we're doing that effectively, but we also are looking earlier and working to do what we can to make sure that we start the school year with everybody in place to present the instruction we need for our students. Oops, there we go. Okay, multitasking here. Current openings, this is as of last Friday. We did a better job starting earlier this year. We really, and I shared this throughout the process last year, we were able to fill the majority of our positions before the school year ended. And obviously, we still have some openings. We have elementary openings right now, 2 full-time classroom teachers due to some TOSA hires, meaning that we had teachers in classrooms who have chosen to apply for TOSA positions, which has then created openings on their sites. And beyond that, at the elementary level, we have 2.1 part-time RSP prep teachers and TOSA assignment openings that have yet to be filled. The secondary openings, only 1.9 FTE of part-time openings across the district, which is quite an accomplishment, really looking at getting out early, attending job fairs, moving up the timeline so that we're actually giving ourselves and our sites enough time to get people interviewed and get them onboarded and get them ready to start the school year. We continue to have some issues in hiring around special services. We have, this was mentioned by Ola earlier, that we really need to start having some serious conversations about what we do to fill some of these hard-to-fill positions, like school nurses, psychologists, and also something else that, that wasn't included on the slide but really needs to be discussed is bilingual staff. As we look at the students we serve in our district, we need to make a concerted effort to improve the recruitment of bilingual teachers. And this is something that's, I've been looking into, and we've been having a lot of conversations as a cabinet. It's not just an issue for Santa Rosa, it's an issue in the state of California. And we know that the number of bilingual credential candidates is low. We know that districts around the state are vying for the limited number of people, but we need to be competitive, and that involves a lot of things, and do what we can to recruit bilingual folks and fill these hard-to-fill positions. The elementary class sizes, and as we work through scheduling, elementary is, I used to tell people all the time, the smaller the child, the smaller the problems, which it's an oversimplification of things, but when you have, when I was at the Arts Charter today, just running around, seeing all these little kids running around, and I was talking to a teacher, and I said, I don't know if when I was middle school, I couldn't have done this, and she said, well, sure you could, because you're good with kids, and da-da-da-da. She goes, I couldn't do middle school because they're bigger kids, they have bigger issues. And I said, well, I've always said, bigger the kid, the bigger the issues. But elementary enrollment is driven, every elementary staffing is driven by enrollment. And we see over time different schools being impacted by what's happening in their neighborhoods. We know that Helen Lehman is full, Hidden Valley is always full. We know as we see building projects in those areas continue, we're going to have to look at how do we handle that increased enrollment because we have capacity issues and everything else. But currently, we have some overages in the district, contractual overages at Brook Hill, Monroe, Proctor, and Steele, and all other classes are below contractual levels. But there are some, we do need to talk about and always keep an eye on the LCFF funding of the K-3 classes. And we do have areas in our district where we're, grade levels are bumping up against that 24-1. And so we're having continuous conversations around that. And it's important to share with the board, and I've been sharing this with principals as they run into these and have these conversations with folks, that the LCFF funding rules really are a K-3 average by site, meaning that the district could have funding put at risk if a single site has an average of more than 24 K-3, meaning all their classes, kindergarten through 3rd grade. So that is something we're actually always keeping an eye on as well, even though it's not a contractual issue, it certainly is a funding issue we want to be aware of. Oops, did I do this right? Okay, middle schools. That was my old stomping ground area of expertise, and I'm showing, because this was part of the discussion we had last year about the classes under 20. But I also felt, looking at all the master schedules at the secondary level, it was important to include that we have classes that are over 33 as well. So you can see there that we still have classes that are a substantial number of courses, 18, 15, that are under 20 enrollment, and that's excluding our low ESL and our RSP numbers as well. And these will be conversations that we have with middle school principals, and a lot of this has to do with projections and enrollment. So it'll be important to have those conversations early so that we can make sure that we're staffing appropriately. Did I go too far? Oh, here we go. So the complex high school enrollment and staffing. This to me was really, it was a troubling thing to see. monitor on a regular basis, because that's part of my job, where enrollments and staffing are. And we need to do it from both sides. I included this information because it was important to see that there's some conversation and work that needs to be done around staffing and getting information from students so that we are staffing and providing the correct courses for them in electives and everything else. But I included here, like at Montgomery High School, for example, 40 core classes over 33. That's a problem. It really is. I mean, I've been having conversations with the administration about how do we address, especially in the area of English. The English department is impacted there, so we need to look at how do we fix that? How do we make sure that we're providing classes for students where the teacher, it's manageable for teachers and it's also appropriate for students. You look at the other high school enrollments around the district, we can see that it's much less drastic, but I included both sides of that spectrum to kind of initiate the conversation. I'll be working with site administration to resolve those tight spots, as I have been with, Elsie's got a PE overage, and so we have those conversations ongoing. How do we make sure that we're providing the optimum education services to our students while at the same time being responsible with our staffing? And so this information was there so that we acknowledge the fact that there's, high school scheduling is complex. I liken it to, and others have used other analogies, but you push in one spot and something else pops out over here. So you have to be cognizant of how you're using your sections, and I think it's going to be important to continue to move up what we do as a district to get information from students and families about what we need so we can make the appropriate staffing recommendations as we move forward for next year. But again, I included both of these sets of numbers because it's important to kind of see both sides of the spectrum so that we can actually address the things that need to be addressed moving forward. We see some of these classes that are under 20. Again, it's conversations around, I've seen multi-level core and elective classes, small AP, IB classes. Some courses in world language have, 3 levels in one course. There's low enrollment in some elective and CT courses, and we have courses where there's 2 courses of the same subject, AP English at a site, for example, offer 2 different periods by the same teacher, each with less than 20 enrollment. Now, it's not optimum to have a course of 40, but we certainly can look at what can we do to kind of make the best of the situation we have, and how do we optimize what we're doing with staffing. So this kind of gets to the questions. How can the student request process take place in a time frame for shared decision making for the upcoming school year? And so that is an important thing, and I know that as we move forward and looking at how do we best utilize our student information system, there are opportunities there to automate a lot of that, which could be done earlier in the year to collect that information. And some of the information that has been discussed doesn't change drastically. All kids are going to take English. I was speaking at the break with a teacher. We should know at a site level at a high school, when we have X number of students and the enrollments really haven't changed, we should know it shouldn't be complicated to staff an English department effectively, because every single student has to take English. What makes it complicated is the singletons that exist, and some of those have existed for a long time in our district and have continually been under-enrolled. So if there's a way that we could collect this information in an automated or an online fashion that would get us that information much quicker, that's something we should be looking at. Also, again, the purpose of this presentation was to have a discussion about what processes need to change to ensure access for all students. If I'm looking at, and I'm just speaking about what I've seen, if I'm looking at small courses at AP and IB levels, what kind of conversations need to take place to increase access? What can we do to encourage and support more students to take those courses moving forward so that not only are we it's not about just filling courses, but it's allowing students who may have not thought about it or have not really been encouraged to do so, get them the access and the exposure to that level of rigor so that it is a better experience for those students. And the last one is, and this is again part of the discussion, and we'll be revisiting this with the board as we go through the school year, is how do we maintain a balance between appropriate staffing, course offerings, and overages? I mean, that gets down to kind of the nitty-gritty of what comes with staffing, is that we really need to be working with our site administrators, with our teachers, as we move through this process so that we can have conversations with the board and bring the information to the board so if need be, decisions can be made moving forward on how we serve our students best. So are there any questions or comments?
Director Carl.
Jason, you alluded to it in the last statement. When are we going to see an analysis of where we are this year relative to overages? 2 years ago, we were off the charts. Last year, we did a heck of a lot better job with respect to that, and that obviously has an impact on budget as well. Do we know where we are now, or when are we likely to see information on that?
The first day of overages just happened last Thursday,
Right.
but I do. IT has created a program for me, which allows me to monitor this on live, I guess, if you will, or update it every day, so I can get that information to the superintendent. She can include that in her update.
Okay, that'd be great. Second thing is that this information is fabulous. I mean, it was fun to walk through these charts. We have one school where the same teacher has, two teachers are teaching the same class in the same period, and one has 8 and one has 15. And why that isn't one class of 23, I don't really get it. Now, that's really easy for me to say because I get the chart here. I get that there are a whole bunch of issues that get into play. And the last thing in the world you want is me screwing around with master schedule. But it's helpful to see it because what it does is it raises the issues. And I'm glad that you guys are properly focused on that. Because it relates to staffing as an overall, which relates to budget, which relates to our ability to be able to deal with health benefits and other things that we all want to increase. So it's all wrapped up in together. And I think that what we're seeing now is the ability to get this information and get it in a form that will allow you to work with the sites to address these kinds of issues, and I think make some real progress, and that's what I'm excited about.
Thank you.
Ron is next, but Ron, I forgot, I have a speaker card.
Oops, sorry.
I looked up and, no, it wasn't your fault, I looked up and said, I'm like, why are they all standing on it? Oh, so it's Dorothy Patch Kennedy?
I can actually speak on behalf of her.
That's fine.
All right, cool. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Kristen Reed, and I teach English and Student Government at Montgomery High School, and I would like to address the current staffing levels at our site. I'll be paraphrasing some of my comments this evening from a letter from teachers at our site to the board addressing this issue and adding some updated information assembled by a colleague. The district has collected data about our current staffing levels, and while we have known for some time that we're struggling with large class sizes, it was not until seeing slide 6 of tonight's presentation that we knew just how bad things had gotten. In that slide, Montgomery High has the fewest classes under 20 students, 14 sections, and the most classes with more than 33 students, 40 in that slide, when compared to other high schools in the district. Our numbers are outliers on both ends of the spectrum. For the 40 core class sections in which more than 33 students are enrolled, the average class size is 37, which is tied with Pioneer for the highest in the district. This also happens to be the size of my largest English class. However, since the district ran their audit and prepared the slide you saw earlier, our numbers have changed significantly, and they've gone in the wrong direction. We now have 55 sections with 33 or more students in core classes alone. That's just the core classes. When we add world language and PE into the mix, both of which are essential for either graduation requirements or university entrance requirements, that number shoots up to 80 sections with 33 or more students in them. Let me repeat that. 80 sections with 33 or more students in them at Montgomery High School. We have approximately 370 sections total, which means a minimum of 21% of our classes are larger than 33. If we count other electives like visual and performing arts, which are frequently filled beyond capacity, that percentage will only increase. Now, despite our numbers being the worst in the district, we have been told we will not be receiving any more sections to help alleviate this problem. At the February 10th board meeting, QKA Architects presented a demographic study and provided projected enrollment numbers. In that report on circle page 207, they cited the projected enrollment at MHS to be 1,585 this year. As of today, our enrollment is 1,628. This means we are 43 students over our projection, which would mean at a bare bones minimum, we are due 5 or 6 additional class sections to accommodate those students, yet we have received 0. As a direct result of the decision to not extend more sections to our campus, our students will continue in very large classes in which they may not receive the attention they need and deserve. While we as a staff will continue to do all that we can to support our students and hold high academic expectations, teachers too will be forced to make changes to accommodate large class sizes. There is no doubt that the quality of education will be negatively impacted. We are deeply concerned about the situation the district has created with this inequity across sites and respectfully ask that the district extend to us sections to help alleviate this extreme imbalance in our schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Kristoff.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jace, for the report. It's, this information, this is the kind of stuff that really is very telling. And this is a tough topic. Actually, I want to ask a point of clarification. Is this an action or discussion item?
It's a discussion.
Discussion, okay. So anyway, people know that.
Okay.
We'd like to take some action, but there
Well,
actually isn't any.
I'm just saying, that's why Ron's confused, because it says action. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have some overriding concerns. I agree with Bill that money is surely a part of it, but I've said this for years. There's been a mantra that school really starts the 3rd or 4th week of school. And there's a culture and an attitude, I think, that's still there. I don't know if I'm wrong, teachers, but we're still shifting people around in classes. It's not anybody's fault per se. We've tried to get better at this before. Hopefully, maybe with some software, some technology, we're going to do better. But I'm wondering if there are other districts that don't have this much unsettled time going on at the beginning of the year. We're losing instructional time, and it's so dear to us. Actually, we should have more days than 180 days. But that if people are moving around 2 or 3 times the first 3 weeks of school, you know, Jace, as a principal, what this is all about. So I'd like to do better. And I think it's really important that we maybe look at other models. We started a committee, and I thought it had some success for a while, and then we didn't have it. I don't know if we would need to reconstitute something that gets a lot of people involved with good ideas, but I really think it's important that we try and settle this earlier than 3 weeks out. That's just too much movement, too much lost instructional time. And I would say that in the numbers you presented, which I really appreciate, the Montgomery situation is glaring. And I have no way to verify what was said, but I really think it's important that we address this issue because it really, out of all the other schools, is something different. Thank you.
Larry.
Well, there seems to be a pattern. The core classes are just skyrocketing in numbers. And when we had, you have a lot of students in our district with needs. So, so we need to look, of course, at our electives, and we have a lot of kids that have special needs in our district. So that's, I think, part of the answer. And I don't have the answer, but the situation is an emergency situation. So I appreciate you bringing this forward and addressing it. And I don't know what you can do. If you can give them an extra 5 or 6 sections, that'd be wonderful. I don't know what that means at this point in the game. It's a lot of disruption. How many weeks has school been going? Yeah, so it makes it really tough unless you actually hire a new teacher, and that impacts the budget. But I think at Montgomery, I think it'd be warranted. So yeah, thank you for addressing the situation. It's much appreciated.
Frank?
I have 3 thoughts. First, I agree with Ron. I think there's kind of a habit that we have gotten ourselves into, which translates into lost time. 3 weeks has always been, ever since I've been here, it's been about 3 weeks that it takes to settle down a semester and get everybody in the right seat. So I would like to hear from staff at some point, some ideas about what we can do to decrease that creep. Because if it's always 3 weeks, then it never gets settled until week 3, and then the question is, why didn't we do it in week 2? It's because we had an extra week to get it done with. So I think perhaps it's just part of the culture that I think, as a board, would like to see changed. The other issue is, when I see the numbers up on the screen, I really don't know what our target is. I mean, what should it be? And that would be helpful, I think, for the board to have a discussion at some point, along with administration and the public as well, about what is the target number. And we ought to work towards that target number. Right now, I don't know what it should be. It's all over the map. We don't really have a target. And so when we talk about this further, I think we need to come to some thought about what is the maximum size and hold dear to that. That's the way it's going to be. Now, I remember years ago, there was a committee established by the board to look at class sizes and overages and that type of thing. And I remember there was a rich board discussion at the time about that, a report and discussion that took place away from the board, but with board member participation on an ad hoc committee. My understanding was that the folks that populate the classes themselves are our counselors in the district, because they're the ones in control of placing people into the correct seats for their particular need. But there's also a way to turn off the ability to go over, so grossly over, some maximum level, to yet be determined, because I don't know what a target is. And so I'm sort of thinking that if we created a system that would lock out after a certain number, that would force decisions to happen sooner as opposed to later into the semester. So if the magic number is 30, then it's impossible to have a 31 or a 32. And maybe that's the kind of pressure it takes inside a system to make it work, so that we can allocate additional resources to stop that problem. And I also know, when you look at the other end of small class sizes, I mean, these are all great classes. Classes taught by great people, doing great things. But there's also a cost that goes along with that that impacts everything else. So there's an expense on going over 33 and there's now an expense going under a certain number. And I don't know what that target number is for the small class size either. But I think we need to come to an understanding that we can't be all things to all people all the time. We just can't afford it. I wish we could do it, but I think there's going to be some difficult decisions made in the future, because how small is small? I think I saw one that had 5, but how can you continuously do that? It hurts everyone, and nobody wants to be the problem. They want to be the solution. So I can see there'll be some curricular changes in the future just because of what we can support in the institution itself. And there'll be, I think, a serious and difficult discussion, but I think an important one to have for the health of our district in the future, where we're going. Thank you.
I completely agree with what Frank is saying. I think it's really, really important, and it will help us manage our budget better. We'll have a stronger faith in how we can enroll classes. And it also will say to students, make up. The other issue here is, I know so many times students come into school in the fall and they're like, they want to change their schedule right away. I'm not saying everything has to be totally locked down, but that's part of our culture too, is, okay, honey, you want to change, we'll change, right? I think that is very, very disruptive. My children never did that, but it's okay. But I think it's very, very disruptive. The thing that I really like about coming up with a number is board members come under a great deal of pressure when we have some issue come before us about a beloved class or a beloved teacher, and it's pretty hard when a room is packed like tonight to not fall prey to that. And I think that by changing this whole system, basically the culture of how we, you know what I'm talking about, it's a good thing. And I would like to see us really work towards that. And I think in the end, everybody will benefit, particularly the students. Jen, did you want to say something? I did. It's okay, go ahead.
I thought I had raised my hand, but I just thought about it, I think. I kind of agree with everything that's been said, and so I won't say too much, but I'm glad we're taking this seriously. And the other thing that I think I've asked for before that I'd like to see as part of this analysis is the effect of the regular and academic classes. How is that affecting the number of sections that we have and how difficult it is to manage them?
I
Larry?
think all these suggestions need to be looked at. I really like that idea of you lock it at 30, the one that Frank made. It would put more responsibility on the students to come early and to get things straight, what they really want, instead of, because I know they come in later, oh, they don't like this teacher and they want to change and yada, 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 and it, I think I like that idea. You're at 30, you can go to 32 max, that's it. No more. You don't have 37, ever. Anyway, that's...
Bill?
Sorry, I'm breaking the rule of talking twice, but there's one note
See,
that
now
I...
you shouldn't have said that. I didn't really, actually,
Yeah, I know.
could have gotten away with it.
I know. I'm trying to help you. We have 2 elementary positions that are open. How are those being taught right now?
When we don't backfill, I mean, we don't release the teacher from the classroom to become the TOSA until the position is filled.
I hope that
So,
that
and
was
those were interviewed actually, and so we're in the process.
fabulous. I hope that that was the answer, and I'm glad that it is.
Okay, I think you've heard from everybody, and you have some direction? Great. Let's move on then to F3, which is a discussion item on advanced placement course enrollment.
Good evening. President Jay, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight, you're going to hear an advanced placement enrollment and information from last year's 2015-2016 school year. Director Fletcher, who is new to curriculum instruction, will be running through the slides tonight. I turn it over to Director Fletcher.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent Kitamura. I'm here to discuss the advanced placement enrollment and information for 15-16. And before I get started, I would really like to thank Aisha Morgan, Jerry Wallachine, and IT for helping me gather and disaggregate the data for this report. You're going to hear some of the difficulty we had with the data. But first of all, I want to address Santa Rosa City Schools LCAP goal number 1. This is really going to be guiding us as we move through the future, as we plan our master schedules, which we just talked about with staffing. We want to be able to provide our students with a rigorous, relevant education, making them college and career ready. So when you look at the State Board of Education, their LCFF evaluation rubric for AP, which Superintendent Kitamura has referred to earlier, it's right in line with what our district is trying to do. They are wanting us to be able to track our participation rates in our AP courses, and we will be doing that because our expected measurable outcomes include a 5% increase in the enrollment of our targeted groups, a 5% increase in the test taking. In our district, if you take an AP course, it is not a requirement that you also take the exam. So you'll see some of those figures in a minute. And then a 5% increase of students who are scoring a 3, 4, or 5 on the test, which are generally considered a passing score for colleges that accept AP courses. And of course, then there's the College Board. And the College Board, for those of you who don't know, is a not-for-profit organization whose goal is to connect students to college success and opportunities. And their mission is right in line with what we're trying to do, which is to provide universal access to high standards of learning for all students. Okay? And one of the things I do want to address at this time is the College Board has a different method of gathering data. And they have a different, if you look at attachment number 3 in your packet, you'll see a little table at the bottom in small print that shows what the College Board tracks for ethnicity compared to what California, the federal government, and SRCS tracks for ethnicity. So they don't really talk to each other. Another issue that they have is these tests are bubbled in by the students, so the demographic information is all student-driven at this point. And so they may pick something that is not related to what is in our system, and they also don't have to put their student ID number on it. So our data does not talk to each other at this point in time, and we are working to change that. Our next slide is just really simple. It is the total number of enrollments in AP classes for 2015-16, and I just have compared it with the 2016-17 numbers. And I can just tell you right now that we've not met our goal for increasing 5% of total enrollment. We're short about 75 students. Okay. And by the way, we are talking about that already in our VP meetings, and they've already seen all the information I'm presenting to you and said we've got to be working on this to change this for the future. So this is a count of individual students enrolled in AP courses by ethnicity and site. This is important because you're going to see some figures where we had like 1,959, the previous slide was 1,959 students enrolled in or taking AP courses. Many of those students are taking more than one course. So this is individual students by the site and ethnicity. Oh, one more thing on that one. Sorry, I had to check my notes. So I do want to make note that Montgomery High School has very low figures. Please remember, Montgomery is an international baccalaureate program, and they last year offered 38 sections of IB courses, okay, with a total enrollment of 852 students, but that represents 379 unique students taking IB courses at Montgomery last year. We do not have any testing results from them because it hasn't been published yet from IB. Okay, and this is just a little table showing you the total enrollment of the schools, how many people in this, each school took one or more AP class, and just the socioeconomic disadvantaged population at those sites. Again, AP does not collect that data, and because we don't have ID numbers attached to the AP reports, we can't commingle the data and come up with that for you. We are working on that if that is something you would like to see. So I just wanted to point out that our AP courses range from the highest is the English language and composition, 213 students took that exam, down to psychology, world history, Italian and Japanese, with one person taking each of those tests. I'd also like to point out that psychology, world history, and Japanese are not courses taught in this district, and yet students take them. So please, please, please be aware when you look at our numbers. Not every student who's in an AP course takes the AP exam. Not every student who takes an exam took the course. Okay, so that's just a small example. I'll give you another one. At Montgomery, many of the kids, there's about 10 kids that I know of that took the physics IB or physics AP exam, even though they're in the physics IB course. So there's some discrepancies with numbers. Okay. So our next steps, we need to collaborate and strengthen our AP programs to meet our LCAP goals. We need to increase our student participation, which is something we'll be targeting for next year. We are currently working on master plans for both the English learners and the advanced learners, and we want to include this type of data in there to make sure that everyone has full access to this advanced learning and having them be college and career ready. We need to discuss board policy regarding level changes and drops. I think that impacts our program. One of the packets that I handed out.
Laura's going to hand it out
Lori's
now.
going to hand out a packet. I went through and put together just really quickly, using Jason's list, a list of the courses taught at each high school, what their starting enrollment was after the third week of school, when everything kind of settled down, and what their ending enrollment was. Some classes are very good at keeping their students, and some are not. And our ability to drop classes throughout the year impacts our staff with
schedule changes, okay? So I think that's something the board needs to be looking at, and the staff will bring that to you at a later point, I'm sure. And then we need to think creatively, such as using technology to provide AP options and access to greater number of students. You will see that Pioneer in particular, if you look at Pioneer, they got a lot of purple on there. Those are their combined classes, so they have an art teacher that has several different AP art classes within a section where they're teaching Art 1, Art 2, and Art 3. And maybe there's students at the other high schools that aren't taking the art class because they don't have access to it, and perhaps technology would be a way to bring that to greater numbers of students for our increased success. So we do have some questions that we'd like you to consider. How do we increase our enrollment in the AP courses to reflect our district demographics? How can we increase our participation in AP exams since we don't require it? And how do we leverage the use of technology to bring that AP content to more students? Are there any questions?
I want to, first of all, thank you guys very much, and Diane for putting this forward. This is very good information, again, and I appreciate it. Data is important, but I think it needs a little perspective sometimes. But Anna and Lori, thank you, and Steve, this is an excellent job. What I'd like to do, because I taught AP for 17 years or 18 years, is just kind of give a little perspective on it, because I think there may be a larger question here than what we're talking about meeting our LCAP goals. When I first started teaching it, I had 2 or 3 students in an academic government or political science class that I would coach on the side, and we would take that test. And these kids, if they got a 4 or 5, could use that at Berkeley, and that would substitute for Poli-Sci 1. As we went on and added courses, what happened, I'm not sure if they went back to .org, but AP went from .org to .com. And all of a sudden, there were a lot of course offerings, there were a lot of practice books, there were a lot of tutorials on the side, there were a lot of, anyway, the test became paramount. And the discussions in terms of, the rich stuff that I had with the kids when I first started kind of stopped. And then as the colleges got wind of this stuff, the bigger, the larger colleges in particular, they realized they were losing their bread and butter courses. So, you didn't get any credit at all for a 3 or a 4. You had to have a 5. And then the 5 didn't matter. Then you could go from Poli-Sci 1 to you could skip Poli-Sci 1, go to Poli-Sci 2, but you didn't get any credit for it. So things shifted all over the place, and it's still shifting, because kids would come to me my last year of teaching and say, does UC or Columbia take this? And I went, probably not, but you're going to have to find out, because they change from year to year. And so for me, it was a benchmark for the district, and I think it was a very good idea for us to implement this, because we had standards shortly after we wrote our own district standards. And I think the concept was, how do we ensure rigor? That's what we wanted to do, and that's a very tough question. But for me, the question is, does AP ensure rigor now? Because once the class sizes started to go up and they became .com, we didn't have an essay anymore in Poli-Sci 1. What happened was we went to short answers and multiple choice, because there were so many people in the courses now taking the exam, they couldn't find readers for the essays. So we stopped teaching an essay as a part of that program. Unfortunate, because I think the thinking that really culminated from that kind of a rich course would be more of an essay format. So anyway, for me, it's like, is it still the symbol of rigor? Is it something we need to really say, we got to get more kids into this program, we have to get more minorities into the program? Or do we take a look at where we are and go, we don't have a benchmark from several years ago? But I would guess, just from my experience, that when you say 68.6% of the kids taking the test, that's 30% not taking it. It's the GPA, it's the most important thing, not for all of them. Maybe they want a rigorous course. But when you look at, some of the kids now that know where they're going to school, they may take the course for the GPA, but there's no way they're going to take the test, because they know they don't get any credit for it. Doesn't matter one way or the other. It's hard to get a handle on that. I wouldn't ask you to go digging for that kind of stuff. It's really, really difficult. But that 68% stands out to me. And also the grades, the average, the mean grades for each school. Now, Monty doesn't count, but Maria Carrillo's at a 3, and that was a low score for me for many years, was a 3. And, we wanted 4s and 5s, but I don't know what that means anymore either. So it's just this, before we spend a lot of resources and energy, trying to do these things, I think we need to take a real look at what the AP thing is all about again. So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen?
Thanks for the report. I had one question about Elsie and Piner, whether or not our numbers are impacted by the fact that some of those kids actually do take college courses at Sonoma State.
Good question.
And the JC. Are there fewer, how much is that changing things? That is pretty much my main question. I do think, one thing, in listening to Ron talk, it sort of reminds me of kind of anecdotal experience I have with AP just between me and people I know, and that there is a real problem with sometimes with transferability and which colleges take what.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is there like a good single resource? Does the College Board have that? Can kids go on and check and find out if I'm aiming towards these schools? Are these AP classes going to help me or no?
Generally, the recommendation is that the student should contact the college they want to attend and ask the question.
I know there's always oftentimes problems with like whether or not they're quarter systems or semester systems, and it's confusing, and they think they're getting college credit, and sometimes they are and sometimes they're not. So it'd be nice to have more information about that. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bill?
Thank you. Do we know, I appreciate hearing some of the comments from Director Christoph. Do we know or do we ask students why they don't take the exam? Is there a barrier relative to cost, or is that some percentage?
I would think that there's possibly a barrier to cost, but I also think that what Director Christoph was alluding to is that when you take an AP or an honors or an IB class, you get a grade bump.
Right.
And you get the grade bump whether or not you take the test and pass it.
Right.
So it might be interesting to do a survey of the students in the classes.
I think that
Just
would
to
be
see what
valuable.
they're-
I mean, let's find out why. Because you raised the question, which is, what can we do?
Right.
Well, if I want to know what I need to do to serve my customer, I better ask them. So why don't we do that? Let's find out if we know where that is. The other thing I want to know, this is, again, wonderful data. I really appreciate that we're getting this kind of data that we can fool around with and try to understand, and it's helpful. The total number of exams taken from 13-14 to 15-16 is up from 1281 to over 1,500. So there's progress that's being made.
Yes.
There's also progress being made in Hispanic and Latino, where the increase went from 316 to 489. That's pretty impressive. What also was impressive is the total number of exams taken by each ethnicity has gone, in that case, 24 to 32. What's not so good is that you go down to white, and it's 51 down to 41. So that's why I think we need to understand, what is it? And if it's a barrier to cost, maybe it's something that we need to look at. If there are other things that we find out on that we can have some impact on, then we ought to do something about that. And we ought not lose the fact that the mean score went up a little bit too. It's not massive, but it still is above 3 on a mean score, and that's good. So there's progress being made. Let's just see if we get some more data directly from the consumer.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
Larry?
I didn't realize what that information you gave, Ron. Thank you for that. And then that bears the question, should you really be teaching to the test? Maybe you should be giving that essay. It's definitely a more worthwhile exercise than multiple choice. We know that. So especially if those scores don't mean anything as far as college acceptance, And if we're trying to prepare students for college, that's what we should be doing, is writing across the curriculum. So I'd look at that too, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for the report.
Frank?
I see students every day who come into my office at the college with completing of massive amounts of AP credit. Yesterday, I had a student at over 30 college units completed AP credit-wise. But what makes it difficult is every institution processes this score in a different way. Community colleges as well. So you could take AP calculus here in Santa Rosa City Schools, and you can't take the next more advanced class, forcing you to repeat calculus at the junior college. So the state legislature has noted that. These are problems that from one community college to another, there's 104 community colleges. And so there's legislation pending that will force all community colleges to treat AP the same way and take it out of the control of faculty and their issues so that we can at least be consistent from one school to another. So I guess what I'm asking, one question I have is, when we offer an AP class, shame on me that I don't know the answer to this, but when we offer an AP class in our district, is there additional cost to the district for offering that class?
I wouldn't think so.
There is for IB.
I think if the class sizes are really small, that would be a problem. There is a board policy saying that we can run an AP class at 15. But most people combine the classes with something else.
But maybe Ron can help me here. Ron, is there additional training you have to to offer an AP class to be certified as an instructor and such?
Yeah, there's the AP got to a point, the battle was very political at the college level. So they got to a point that said, we're going to audit teachers and you have to fill out a form and you have to do certain things that guarantees you're going to do it. No charge to the district. But I would say that if you're going to teach, my wife and many of her colleagues have gone through the IB training, several times for some people. I did Stanford a couple times and UCLA once for AP training. So most teachers will take training or get training to help them do a better job. What I found I'm sorry to be cynical about this, but the whole focus the last 2 workshops I went to, and this is some years ago, was how to get more people into the program. And I don't think that was an altruistic kind of approach either. So anyway, sands are shifting under this. And I just would hope that when we make decisions about what we're expecting people to do, that we're real clear on what's going on here. But these are all good questions people are asking. Starts with good information. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, you're right, Director Christoph. The additional, I hate to say additional cost, but a cost to the district is the AP training, the AP workshops.
Well, it generated a lot of questions and comments, so that's good. Thank you, and I guess we'll hear back from you eventually.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to F4, which is approval of the unaudited actual financial activity for 2015-16.
Thank you, President Jay, Superintendent Kitamura, and directors. Once we get the PowerPoint up, I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn Bischoff, our Executive Director of Fiscal Services, who will present the unaudited actuals for you.
Good evening, and thank you for your patience as we work with the technology. So, unaudited actuals, the question came up of, why do we do this? This is the first time that we actually see something other than just budgeted numbers. This is our actual activity for the year. And our fiscal year closes at the end of June. We have a July to June fiscal year, and then we take about a month to 6 weeks to close the books. And then by law, or ed code, if you will, we're required to present them to you by the 15th of September, and then the county office in turn reviews them and pushes them onto the state by the middle of October. So that's why we do unaudited actuals. And here we have a summary of what the budget looked like when we last looked at it in June, where we actually closed the books at the middle part of August. We have an increase of about $5 million, which is about a 3% difference from our original. If you look at our total ending balance, $5 million is about 3% of our entire budget. So within the acceptable percentages. And just as a reminder, that includes our carryover money for our instruction materials we're planning to buy this year, over $7 million. Our LCAP carryover, some of which is already budgeted, that's about $3 million. Our restricted programs are in that number, about another $2.5 million. And we're required to set aside, again, our 3% of economic uncertainty, right around that $5 million mark. Even though we have this additional carryover, I want to remind you, we still have our structural deficit. This does not address our structural deficit. This is one-time money, and it's going to go to the ending balance at this time. Here is where some of that money came from. We grabbed some of the largest numbers to try and to show you what's happening. A little bit more money in the LCFF. That percentage changed from May to closing of the books by about 2%. Our lottery money, they changed the estimate at the end of the year. The E-rate, as we went through closing and unaudited actuals workshops, we were told this now needs to be recognized as both income and an expense. It's just paper right now. It's not really money, and it's not really an expense. It's a credit on our phone bills. And our interest was a little higher than projected. On the other side, we had some expenditures that did not occur. And in salaries and benefits, just looking at that range, over the course of the year and any given month, we have quite a few positions that are open or vacant, meaning someone has left, we haven't gotten a new position hired, and we don't always adjust downward because when that next person comes in, you don't know exactly when they're going to start. And then books and supplies, that's primarily our sites. They're allocated money on a per student basis, and if they don't spend the money, they're permitted to carry it over to the succeeding year. So again, the difference is about a little over $5 million. And one of the small benefits, if you will, is that will allow us to meet our 3% as we're starting to go forward in our budgets. Again, does not address our structural deficit. So just a reminder here of our structural deficit of the current year and each of the succeeding years, and it's growing each year by about $1 million. So over those 3 years, it's at about $10.5 million. One of the areas we try to keep an eye on is our enrollment. And we were comparing day 12 this year, so a couple of weeks into school, to day 12 of last year. We're down about 93 students, and that's over the entire district. Our official enrollment will be recorded on CBEDS Day, or Enrollment Day, which this year is October 5th. It's always the first Wednesday in October, and if you go onto the CDE website and you look for enrollments, this is the date that they're looking at. It's that one snapshot in time. So due to our structural deficit, we have formed an ad hoc fiscal recovery committee, and that committee will be meeting shortly. And just due to the deficit spending, we have seen letters from the county office reminding us that this is becoming a fairly large number and is unsustainable. And we've already talked about that, thus the ad hoc committee. And that is a quick review of the unaudited actuals, and I'll take any questions at this time.
Bill and Larry?
The official enrollment day of October 5th, that's a Wednesday. Is our funding based on, in part, on that particular day?
No, there's no funding based on Seabed's Day. Our
Right.
funding is based on average daily enrollment.
Okay.
So it's over the course of the year through the P2 date, which is in April or May.
So that's
Or
just a
excuse me,
comparison day that we can use from year to year, but we don't have to make sure people show up that day anymore, more or less than we do any other day.
No, as
All
long
right.
as they're enrolled on that day.
All right, thank you.
Larry?
Down 100 students. Can you translate that into dollars?
We get, on an average basis, about $9,000 per ADA. So those 100 students, if you will, not all of them would be here every day. About 94 of them would be. So you're looking at almost $900,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And if we were to gain those students, we'd have an additional $900 and some thousand.
Correct.
And 100, what did you say, 94 students? How many teachers would it take to hire for those 94 students?
If they were in a nice bunch, let's say they were all second or third graders, it would take about 4 teachers. If they were in high school, about 3 teachers. But if they were over various grade levels, couldn't be determined easily.
So when you grow, you make, they're usually young teachers that come in, and you hire them for about $40,000 to $50,000 a year. So if you say, what do we say, 5 teachers?
4 to 5.
So 5 times 50, 250. So you've got 900 and some thousand minus 250, you're up 750. So that's why it's important to grow the district. Okay. And the second question is, and conversely, retain the students. And conversely, or not conversely, but another question is, the unfilled positions, what does that translate to at the end of the year?
Depends upon which positions are unfilled, but it can be well over $1 million over the course of a year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Carolyn? I need a motion then.
Move approval of the unaudited.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Hanel. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student member?
Aye. Thank you. Next up is the LCAP revision approval, elementary district.
Good evening again, President Jay, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight in front of you is a revised elementary school LCAP. There were no changes to the actions or services, but there were some recommendations from the Sonoma County Office of Education around formatting. In part of the packet, you'll see the approval letter from the county saying that our LCAP is good to go for the 16-17 school year for elementary. So I turn it back over to the board.
Any questions, comments? Bill?
There was an enrollment by ethnicity document in here. Again, these are fun documents to go to. You see some trends, and I appreciate that. And interestingly, the total enrollment there was 16,348, and we got a day 12 from the last one of 16,279, so I'm not exactly sure whether that's a later date. The 16,348, does anybody know?
So I'm going to turn it over. I believe that we received that information from last year's, was it last year's?
This is 2016.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so then I guess ran left, but.
Do you know what the cutoff point of this data was, Rick?
We don't know.
I don't know what the
Okay.
cutoff is.
If you find that out.
I can
you
definitely get
just
that
dump it
information
in an
back, yeah.
email.
Yeah.
The one thing that was a little bit striking to me is we have one of our charter schools that had a substantial decrease in Hispanic or Latino, which is sort of the opposite direction of what we've been doing from a policy standpoint and the things that we've been instituting to try to deal with that. So I'd like to understand whether we failed
Okay.
there we made some changes from a lottery to try to deal with that, or there just weren't students available. I don't know, but it would be nice to understand that.
I can go back and get that information,
Right.
looking at who applied for that charter school.
That's all I've got. Thank you. Now move approval of the elementary LCAP.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Hanel. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl? Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student member?
Aye.
So once again, we are asking you to look at the secondary LCAP and its revision. There is a different piece, though, with this as well. We did get some feedback from the Sonoma County Office of Education around formatting, but we also received a letter from Public Advocates, which is part of your packet, in which they really want us to be a little bit more transparent to make sure that the use of the supplemental and concentration grant funds and how we track them are really allocated to provide a clear way to show that the funds are being principally directed towards those students who generate them. And so we actually reached out to Public Advocates, and we had a good conversation about sort of this year's LCAP and also how we move forward. And one of the actions in the LCAP is we give back $1.7 million to sites to utilize through their school plans for student achievement. And you'll notice in Exhibit A that we show how we came up with a formula to give back that money based upon their unduplicated pupil count. And so we've been able to address some of the concerns by Public Advocates, and we also have talked to them about how we move forward and really partnering and having them look at our LCAP as we move forward for the following years. And SCO also wrote a letter saying that the secondary LCAP has been approved. I move it back to the board.
Need a motion?
Second.
It was moved by Director Pugh, seconded by Director Christoph. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye. So confused.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student member?
Aye.
Thank you. Now we move on to F7, which is an approval of a resolution in support of Proposition 51, the Kindergarten through Community College Public Education Facilities Bond Act of 2016.
I'll move approval.
Is
that-
You have a comment?
Yeah, I do.
Go
Is there a
ahead.
second?
Sorry.
Second.
Yeah.
Second.
No, you got to have, if you move, you got to have a second before anybody can talk, so.
Too fast for me, Bill. Yeah. This is, I thought about this a bit. It's not that, it should be a no-brainer, but I don't think it's as simple as, it seems. $9 billion, as I think I mentioned earlier, is not that much money for a state with 1,000 school districts. Secondly, I've tried to find, I've talked to a few people about this. Some districts are already in line for this money. So a lot of the money that's going to be spent, this $9 billion, and so I don't know where we are with this, if we're out the gate or anything like that. But I think we need to be aware of this because it comes out of the same pot. Jerry Brown said it should be local because I think he understands that. There's certain people that seem to get more than their share. Some people aren't going to get anything. Steve, any thoughts on that?
One of the contracts that was approved tonight is with a company that we've worked with in the past and we continue to work with, and they help us get in line to get that money. So we've been working with them over the past few months from an existing contract, and we'll continue to work with them so that we can get in line, because it's all about getting in line. If we're not in line and the money runs out, it doesn't do you any good. So we are aware of that, and we are working on getting in line.
So I had a motion and second. Jen made the motion, and I don't know who made the second. Frank did. And then, so now I need roll call vote, please. Bill, Frank, I don't know. They both raised their hand. Somebody said Frank.
Okay. Director Close?
Aye.
Did you make the motion?
I did.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student member?
Aye. Okay, now we're moving on to F8, approval of a resolution in support of Prop 55.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, seconded by Director Hanel. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student member?
Aye. Okay, now it's F9, another resolution in support of Prop 56, the California Healthcare Research and Prevention Tobacco Tax.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Pugh, seconded by Director Christoph. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
Director Carl?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
Student member?
Aye. And finally, we have F10, approval of a resolution in support of Proposition 58.
Move approval.
I have a comment.
Ron?
Yeah, I do have a comment. Can anybody really believe that we passed Prop 227? It's
It's a different time. It was a different time.
I'm telling you, it's hallelujah, it's about time. It's my comment.
I think that was Carl and Pugh. Am I correct? Okay.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Christoph?
Aye.
Director Close?
Aye.
Director Hanel?
Aye.
President Jay?
Aye.
And student member?
Aye. Good work, everybody. Thank you. Good night. We're adjourned.
I have them. I have them.
Santa Rosa, out there in the middle of everything.